What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a great start to your week. Sam Shapiro back here with more of a Heat latest on FanArc. Jumping into some more hypothetical trades Miami could look into later in this episode. But today we're going to start off with Bleacher Report calling Tyler Harrow the second most overrated player in the NBA. Let me know in the comments if you think this is a blasphemous take or if you, kind of agree with it. I think in some regards it's true, but for the most part, I don't think Tyler Harrow is an overrated player, at least offensively. Eventually, throughout his career, initially starting off winning six men this past year, first time he was named an all-star, so he's kind of on an upward trajectory, I would say, in the grand scheme of things, at least in terms of how his career has been moving forward. But, to call him overrated, I just think it's the second most overrated player in the NBA. I think it's a little bit ridiculous. On that list, they said that, or Bleacher Report was saying that LaMelo Ball was the most overrated player in the NBA. And then following Harrow was Jared Jackson Jr. at 3, Austin Reeves at 4, De'Aaron Fox at 5. The article kind of highlighted how defensively, because of the kinks in the armor, at least on that front in his game, they became more prevalent in the playoffs, especially when Miami was struggling against Cleveland. And because of that, it showed that, defensively, Harrow still has a lot of work in terms of development on that side of the ball. However, I think because of the offensive onslaught that he's kind of proved to be since he's really been in the NBA, I just think that it's a little bit ridiculous to say that he's the second most overrated player in the league. So drop in the comments what you think, if Tyler Harrow is an overall overrated player or not. I think offensively, definitely not, but defensively, offensively, I think he's a great player. Defensively, definitely some kinks in the armor. I think he's definitely worthy of that all-star selection he got last year, just because of how he's really progressed in terms of his ability over the course of his career. He even had some career highs in multiple statistical categories over this past season, including, like I just mentioned, points per game. He's also one of the most efficient players utilizing the step back three-point shot in terms of all of, the guard out of most guards in the NBA. So I definitely think offensively, to say that he's an overrated player overall just because of his ability on that side of the ball, it's a little, I think it's a bit of a stretch, to be completely honest with you. I don't think he's an overrated player. I think he's definitely an all-star type of player, especially because half of the NBA doesn't play defense anymore. And I'm not saying that's an excuse, but he is an elite offensive player, and that's why I think he is deserving of an all-star title, bumper sticker, whatever you want to call it, to his name at this point. So to call him overrated, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. But drop in the comments what you think, if this was a good take by Bleacher Report or not. I'm not really a fan of it just because, I like Tyler Harrow, but to each their own. Anyway, moving over to some more trade hypotheticals that could maybe potentially help out Miami's front court and back court. We're going to start in the front court today. Would Lowry Markin be a good fit, and would it be worth the trade capital Miami would have to fork over if they wanted to add the 7-footer to their front court? I think a player like Markkanen would be so helpful, complementing Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo in the front court, just adding a lot of size. It would help Miami get a little bit younger overall, and I just think that, assuming Miami doesn't have to give up a lot for him, which they definitely would, he could definitely pose a lot of good benefits to being part of that team. So one hypothetical trade that I did see earlier this week would be getting rid of Terry Rozier, which is kind of what I think Miami is really trying to explore if is going to be doable before the beginning of the season starts. But Miami would get Markkanen in a package for Wiggins, Rozier, Jovic, a 2031 first-round pick, a 2027 second-round pick, which would be a swap with OKC, the Knicks, or the Spurs, a 2031 second-round pick with Washington swapping, and then a 2032 second-round pick as well. And I just think that all for Markkanen, that's a bit much. I definitely think that adding a guy like Markkanen in the front court for all those draft assets and those players, I mean, even Wiggins, Rozier, and Jovic, I don't think Miami would be more than willing to cough up in any kind of trade. I mean, we clearly saw with the whole Kevin Durant thing that Miami doesn't want to have to give up multiple players for the price of 3 players for the price of one just because of the depth they're kind of sacrificing, I guess, for one superstar type player. And I kind of agree with looking at it from that philosophy's perspective. I definitely agree with that. I think that that's a little bit much to cough up for Markkanen. I definitely would want to include Rozier, but if you're getting Markkanen in that package, you're probably going to have to include Wiggins and Jovic as well. I don't necessarily think giving up Wiggins would be the best thing ever. If we could get away with trading Rozier, Jovic, and then maybe the first round pick and one of those second round swaps, that might be worth the bang for its buck. But at the same time, giving up a lot of assets like that, not always the best idea. Drop in the comments if you think that trade package is Miami giving up a little bit too much for a forward that could potentially help Bam, that would complement Bam and Ware in the front court. But I think it's giving up a little bit much, even for a guy like Markkanen, who's very talented and would be a force to be reckoned with on both sides of the ball, especially offensively for this Heat team. But definitely an interesting proposal and somebody that I had not really looked at before that maybe could, be involved in a package that would help get Rozier off of Miami's plate. But moving into a deal also kind of pertaining to Rozier, and maybe that could help fill some gaps that on that front, at least for Miami. Jrue Holiday just going to Portland, so maybe this deal a little bit unlikely, but could adding Jrue Holiday help Miami's backcourt? The 35-year-old elite defensive player definitely, I think, would be an interesting backcourt add to, just look into at this point, just because, I mean, if you're going to be shopping for point guards and you're going to be looking for strong two-way players that have game like that, definitely could be worth it. However, in terms of financial, it wouldn't really free Miami up of much financial wiggle room, just because even though you're getting rid of Rozier's deal, which is involving, $25 million, Jrue Holiday still on a major contract that coming over from Boston, it wouldn't really free up a lot of room for the 305 on that front. So assuming Jrue Holiday is able to stay healthy, definitely could add more to Miami's backcourt than Rozier, just because of the elite defender he is. I think he is a top 3, if not the best two-way guard, top 3 overall two-way player in the NBA, arguably the best two-way guard in the NBA, in my opinion. But I definitely think that if Miami could somehow swing a deal with Rozier and Holiday, I don't know how they would make that happen, but I definitely think it would add a lot. It would definitely bolster the Heat backcourt for sure, and could, assuming that Harrow couldn't, get over some of the woes and how he was kind of a liability on defense. I'm not saying it would completely slap a Band-Aid on a gashing wound, but I just think that, if you're looking for somebody to fill defensive gaps with veteran experience that could complement a team like the 305, really work to that Heat culture, I definitely think Jrue Holiday would be a great option. The package I was looking at particularly, Miami gets Jrue Holiday for Terry Rozier, Kashad Johnson, a 2031 first-round pick, and a 2032 second-round pick. Again, those draft assets might be a little bit too much. If Miami was able to swing Jrue Holiday for Rozier and Kashad Johnson, that'd be an absolute steal. And I think Portland they would probably want the draft picks maybe more. So even I wouldn't want to throw in that first rounder, but if Miami could pull off only having to trade one of those picks and those 2 players for Jrue Holiday, assuming Holiday could stay healthy, I think that could be a viable trade that would help bolster Miami's backcourt in the long run. And moving over to some other news now involving Miami's head coach Erik Spoelstra. The timing of his new contract being announced, very, very, very interesting to say the least. His new deal that was announced pretty recently, roughly $120 million over 8 years. But it was interesting because this is one of the higher paying contracts we've seen for an NBA coach in the league in general. But many people were surprised by the timing of when it was announced. Shortly after Coach Spoelstra's divorce from his wife was finalized in late 2023, the contract was then revealed later in 2024. So some people questioned whether the Heat waited for the divorce to be finalized before making the offer to him. The theory was that the team was possibly waiting to avoid having the contract's funds included in the divorce settlement. And I don't know if Pat Riley was in charge of this or whoever, but that's an absolute W move. Shout out the Heat organization for that. Absolute W move. W move just because looking out for Coach Spoelstra, making sure that he's getting paid for putting all that hard work in coaching the Miami Heat. Absolute W move, Pat Riley. Absolute W move, Miami organization. And I just think that Miami was looking out for Coach Spo in that move, if that is the case. I'm not pointing and saying, oh, that's entirely sure why that happened. It kind of seemed like as it developed over time, as the news regarding this has kind of developed over time, that kind of has been the case. But I just think that if that is the case, they were looking out for Coach Spo for sure. So shout out Miami, W move in my opinion, if that is the intention behind it. But if that was just how the cookie crumbled, then I guess maybe hats off to Coach Spoelstra in terms of one less thing he had to maybe worry about in terms of if he was gonna have to lose one of the big time deals out of any coach in the NBA has kind of seen at this point so far. So drop in the comments if you think the timing of how everything was laid out was intentional, or if it kind of just panned out that way, or maybe there was a whole other situation going on. But like I said, if that was the case, W move Heat Nation, W move Heat organization, and W move Pat Riley. That's going to do it for today's episode, but be sure to tune in, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for daily content all pertaining to the Miami Heat. Once again, I'm Sam Shapiro. Hope you have a great Monday.